call this meeting of the MSAD 49 Board of School Directors to order. Roll call, Wooten, here. Boyden. Here. Brownwoods. Here. Caberly. Here. Davis Folsom. Dumont. Here. Cassie. Here. Hussey. Kimley.
Here.
Knowles.
Here.
Lambert. White.
Here.
And Williams. Pledge of allegiance. Approval of minutes. Is there a motion to accept the minutes of the May 20th, 2021 board meeting? And it's moved by Billy Joe, seconded by Sarah, to approve the minutes of the May 20th, 2021 board meeting. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Eight. All those opposed? 0 abstained? 2. Thank you. Citizens input.
Good evening, school board members and administrators. Thank you for the work you do for our schools, students, and communities. My name is Jennifer Wright-Smith. I teach first grade at Albion Elementary School. I attended Clinton Elementary as a student, graduated from Lawrence High School, and have been teaching at Albion for 26 years. I'm also a district resident living in Benton. I was here in the fall to encourage conversations and support for teachers and to bring attention to the struggles our teachers were facing. I'm back tonight because I have great concerns for our district. The issues I speak of are not specifically pandemic issues. The pandemic obviously made things more difficult, but honestly, the pandemic challenges we expected and hope are short term. There are issues in our district that are district-wide and they're not new. We often speak of them in general terms as morale issues, teacher concerns, and school challenges. We speak of them, but nothing seems to change. I told you in the fall that the restrictions on access to our schools was very difficult for many teachers. I begged for more access. We were granted 30 extra minutes, and thank you for the 30 minutes, but it really didn't help. It actually made me feel further misunderstood. As I reminded you in the fall, I was locked out in March of 2020 and not allowed to return to my classroom until a couple before I was supposed to start teaching again in September. My classroom furniture was removed, my supplies were removed and rearranged. I was told things like, you can no longer have centers, students can no longer sit or work in groups. My rug was removed, my read-aloud area no longer existed. I had boxes and piles of stuff to dig through. I did not know where anything was, and I had no places to put my things. Unpacking and setting up in these conditions was a difficult task, but it was made impossible with the lack of time that I was given. I'd also like to remind you that while literally digging a tunnel through my classroom, I was also tasked with worrying about hybrid teaching, remote teaching, setting up a Google Classroom for the very first time. I was worried about teaching under very different conditions. I was worried about following protocols. I was worried about making students feel happy, welcome, and safe. These are things that I knew I could do, but could I do them in a couple of days with no prep? Could I do it without time to work with my peers? Could I do it without my tools and supplies? I didn't have a choice. Elementary teachers had not done any of these things. Not giving us time to prepare felt unfair. The more I think about this, the more requests that I do get. What job asks you to do a whole new job without giving you time to figure out how? I couldn't find my desk. I'm not exaggerating. My room was a mess, and honestly, it still is. I did what I could at the time I was allowed, but many things are hidden in totes and stacked around my room. How did you expect us to teach students in person and remotely without preparing? We ran around and learned to fly a plane while we were flying it. It's what we do, but is that what we should do? I will not forget how this felt. I didn't know what my teaching would look like and feel like, and was still figuring out when I came to you in the fall. My students didn't have devices until sometime in October. When they did get devices, they showed up in our kindergarten and first grade rooms in boxes needing to be completely set up. We did not know how to set them up. We were not allowed to stay after school, and our specials had been reduced by 10 minutes. How were we supposed to set these up ourselves? In the past, I simply would have just stayed after school and done that. You took that option away from me, and again, we just figured it out, leaned on each other, and a very helpful secretary. Now that I've taught in this model, I can tell you that it's very time-consuming. It took a lot of time and mental energy. Again, this was very different at my level than it was at the junior high and high school. This I knew back in the fall and was the basis of the worry. It was the basis for me begging for time and support that I feel I didn't receive. I teach 6 and 7-year-olds. They need help logging on. They need adult support both with the digital and the paperwork that I give them. They're learning to read and they're learning to write. These are not things that I could just tell them to go off and do. I needed to create all new ways of teaching in the classroom. I had to create new ways for them to work at home on their remote days. My centers and supplies were gone, and I said it before, but I'm saying it again. My teaching totally changed, and I felt I was not allowed time to adjust to that. I had to prepare lessons for 2 in-person groups of students, and it was not a matter of doing the same thing 2 days in a row. My 2 groups had 2 very different schedules due to the very specialist schedules we had in Albion. They were not doing the same things, so I had a blue group, a gray group, and a red group. The red remote students I had not even met. I would only see them virtually, but I was their teacher and responsible for their learning. As the year progressed, I had a red student become blue, I had a blue student become green, I had school-wide and classroom-only quarantines and shutdowns. There was one quarantine where I had a group at school with a sub, so I was responsible for the sub-plans, but I was not allowed to go to the school to make the plans. So while I was home making sub-plans, I was also teaching the other group virtually from my home. I was not alone in this. This is how many of us functioned. Teaching is not a job where you can simply call in and not show up. The quarantines and the continued teacher restrictions did not allow us to make or drop off sub-plans in the evenings or weekends if we got sick or our own children got sick. It felt like another impossible task. When we expressed how hard it was to prepare for quarantines, remote teaching, and sub-plans, we were told to make emergency plans. We did. We were told to create and send emergency packets home. We did that too. Please stop and consider. Emergency plans need to be things that can be done by all students at any time and used by a teacher, a sub, or a parent. Is that really what you want your child doing on a regular basis? It's not what I wanted my students doing. In 26 years, I've actually never used emergency plans, and that's why this year I spent hours and hours recreating tasks that were relevant to the time of the quarantines or the shutdowns. It was exhausting, but it was the right thing to do. I will also tell you that there were some parts of remote teaching that were fun. I got to interact with my students in a totally different way. It was fun to meet each other in the mornings. Coffee hour with 6-year-olds is kind of fun. Working on different kinds of things online, and we actually liked it when the blue and gray groups were one big group online. We didn't have to wear masks, and I could see their smiles and their missing teeth. I figured out Google Classroom. I learned to share a screen. I learned to access my guided reading books and continued individual reading lessons virtually. I was proud of myself for what I learned and did. I was proud of what my parents and students learned and did. I also kept thinking about how it could have been so much better if I had been given time to adequately prepare. Teachers have teacher friends in other schools and other districts. It's the same with any profession. My teacher friends in other schools inform me of some interesting things. No other teacher that I know has been locked out of their school or classroom. They can't believe that we are. Other teachers told me that they had either a day off or an early release day during the week for sanitizing and for teachers to plan and prep for hybrid and remote teaching. Some districts released early each day, and the last hour of the day was remote teaching for the whole school. Some places had remote teachers. These things took my breath away. We had none of those supports. We did eventually get a couple in-service days, and I thank you again for those, but we waited until we were buried. It made me once again feel actually worse. I know that things were not all right in those other schools, but those teachers did feel like their district and administrations were trying to support them. I think that's what we're saying, that maybe we're feeling that we are missing. When I came to you in the fall and begged for time to work in my room, I was told that we wanted to err on the side of sanitization. That process was not, I believe, what you thought it was, at least at my school. One night there was a scheduling issue and the cleaners came early and they asked if they could clean in my room while I was still working. They came in, they wiped the doorknobs, my sink, and some other touch points, cleaned my desks, and they left. That was the process. I honestly don't see why I couldn't stay in the room when they did that. It was not a sealed-off, sanitized hospital room. By mid-year, that clean stopped, and I'm pretty sure the only touch point maintained now is my doorknob. When they did deep sanitizing after the exposures in the room, they did spray chemicals in the air. I know this because the chemicals ruined all my posters, books, and any papers left on books and shelves. If I needed to leave for that process, I certainly would have. During April vacation, our rooms were minimally cleaned. We inquired and were told that there was a staff shortage in the district and they weren't able to clean our rooms. The kindergarten and first grade desks were dirty. Our young children are very messy. We cleaned our own desks, which we've done in the past, but we really thought this year that they would be sanitized during a vacation. In the kindergarten classroom, there were multiple positive COVID cases of both adults and students this spring, and the room was not sanitized after those cases. When an inquiry as to why that was made by the teacher was told that, oh, we didn't find out in time, so it was too late to do any sanitizing. So just to clarify, I can't work in my room after school because of sanitization, but classrooms with positive cases don't have to be sanitized if it's found out too late. It doesn't sound like erring on the side of sanitization to me. When we're short on bus staff, the practice is to put all of our students on one bus. This has happened multiple times and continues to happen. However, those same students are not allowed to have recess together. We can't even have them exit the building together because we've been told it's not safe. However, when we're short on staff, we put them on an enclosed bus. I understand, I do, that adjustments have to be made, but it just feels like the restrictions on teachers remains and all other things are adjustable. It adds to the feeling that many of us are feeling that our district is not consistent and the communication is not always clear. Pandemic sanitization aside, I also feel that our school has been neglected. A few other observations about this fall, our outside learning areas were still outside when the snow was predicted. I started to worry and I started mentioning and reporting it. The furniture not only stayed for the first snowfall, it stayed the entire winter. When I say furniture, I mean seated chairs, tables, and desks. Things I dare say were not meant to be pushed into snowbanks and covered with snow and ice. It was embarrassing to see our school looking like a dumping ground. Parents could see these items buried in the snow when they came to pick up their children. I was upset, and so were many other staff members. It provides an atmosphere of not caring, it's wasteful, and it's a terrible example to set for our students. This was not a one-time event. Recently, another table that was left out all winter fell apart under our monkey bar area. It was there during our recess, so my students and I dragged pieces up to the edge of the school by the door. One of my first graders offered the other day to pick it up after school and burn it in the bonfire at his house that weekend because it was piled at our entrance long enough for a 6-year-old to consider that option. Now that it's warmer, we have once again started to utilize our outside learning areas. Kindergarten and first grade areas were not originally weed wet, so the grass was as high as where our students sit. Last week, one of my first graders said, "Mrs. Smith, there could be ticks in here." Maybe the lawn company forgot, and honestly, this is not something that I would even mention another year, but with the combined with the general feeling of disregard for maintaining our school, it's disappointing and frustrating. Other teachers and our child care provider have also asked what we can do with the trash and broken furniture. It was embarrassing, it looks terrible, and it's at the entrance of our pick-up and drop-off area. As teachers, we spend a great deal of time creating a welcoming environment, asking our students to care for school property. We're not asking the district to do crazy or unrealistic things. We're asking for our classrooms and school to be maintained and cared for. Our librarian purchased a carpet sweeper because her carpet is so rarely vacuumed. We're washing and sanitizing our own desks. My students are noticing unkept outdoor spaces. It's embarrassing and unprofessional. These are sadly not new issues. These are things that we have just actually taken care of ourselves for many years. This year, feeling unsupported and overwhelmed, and feeling that my school is being ignored has pushed me to the breaking point. I've written letters and emails to board members, I've inquired to administration, I've contacted my TA, I've contacted maintenance. I told you that our district needs help, and I do mean it. Our school was without a counselor for the entire year. I asked several times about this issue and was informed that it was a personnel issue and that I couldn't discuss it. I was not asking specifically about our counselor. I was asking why we did not get a substitute counselor, coverage, or someone from the district to come to our school to help us. It would be hard to go without a counselor any year, but we were functioning in a pandemic. We had remote students that we couldn't reach or find. We had parents without internet. We had families in stress. We had students in stress. We had teachers in stress. We had attendance issues all over the place, and we had no counselor to help us. Much like being told to have emergency plans, we were told we could call a counselor in another school. That's not practical or helpful unless it's an absolute emergency. Again, our concerns were voiced, but it has seemed that nothing has happened that's actually helped us. It's June and we still have no counselor. Our school did not have a nurse for much of the year, and we currently don't have one. Did I mention that we were in a pandemic? We had excellent sub-nurses and we lost them. And I don't blame them. We had teachers notifying parents of exposures and quarantines on weekends and late at night when we didn't have a nurse. We have our secretary guarding up and taking kids to the isolation room. That's where she spent most of her day yesterday. That's a health and safety issue and should not be a secretary and teacher responsibility. My heart is in Elgin School. My time is there. My personal items are there. My kids are all there. But this year, every doctor that I have seen has said that stress has caused my medical issues to get much worse. This bulldog has a broken heart, diminished spirit, and needs to consider what working in this district is doing to her health. I'm feeling really poorly about having to go through a laundry list of issues, but I hope that administration and the school board can begin to hear that we're not just complaining, we truly are asking for help. I'm disappointed and discouraged. These are not issues that I can fix as a classroom teacher. These are not issues that my principal can fix. They're district-wide issues that need to be addressed. Please help us find a way to repair our damaged bulldog pride. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Danielle. Adam Cody, the energy attorney for Drummond Woodson, joined us earlier this evening to review the slide deck and the other materials that you received with the agenda. And I'm going to ask him just to recap what he covered in this session. And also for your consideration, just distill down, we have an opportunity to save about 20% of our costs, roughly over a 20-year term, about $680,000 potentially if we move forward with the developer of solar energy in our distribution area provided by CMP. And Adam has been working with Scott in Maine Power Options as a broker, I guess, if you will, to look at what our best deals are. And this is, I think, an opportunity for us to strongly consider. So, Adam?
Thank you, Herbert. Somebody who has a microphone, just quickly ask me what they wanted me to do. I apologize for everyone. I understand. You said that I heard that my name was mentioned and I was being asked to speak for a second.
Yeah, just if you could recap what you reviewed, just very briefly, just distill down points of what this opportunity is and the potential savings and what our commitment would be.
Okay, that didn't help, but I will, maybe give me a thumbs up if you want me to give a very quick overview.
Yes.
That's what we do. So essentially, we just had a discussion. I talked with Scott and also met with superintendent, members of the school board to talk about net energy billing and entering into an agreement that the school would do for 20 years agreement to save 22% or receive a 22% credit savings on their bill to do that. We talked through the program. Essentially, what net energy billing is for most people, it's very similar to when your neighbor had a solar panel on their roof and they got a credit on their electricity charge. A couple years ago in Maine, the law changed so that larger end users of electricity, like school districts, municipalities, and businesses, could sign similar agreements where they would get credit on their bill and they don't even have to have it at their location. So Scott approached me and asked me to look at some potential deals that are out there, and that's the one that we presented to the school board tonight. Essentially, the resolution that is before you is to give Superintendent Herson the authority to ask me to negotiate the terms of this agreement, and if I think that they're appropriate and reasonable for you to agree to, then I would advise her of that, and she would have the authority to do it. We also talked with the board about some ways to sort of mitigate any risk that you could be concerned about signing a long-term contract, which includes making sure we're only signing a contract for a lot less power than you currently use now, just in case in the future you're not needing as much to power, and also to do what's called a non-appropriation clause, which makes it clear to the developer that you are a body that's a public body, and this is being viewed as a current expense, and future school boards may not view this as a project that they would want to move forward on and not appropriate the funds to do it. So the developer would understand that they're taking that risk, even though you're signing a 20-year contract. So that's the Reader's Digest version of what we talked about on this contract. The resolution before the board, we need a motion from somebody to put forward, and then a vote giving Superintendent Person the authority to have me negotiate a contract with them.
Thank you, Adam.
I move that a vote entitled Vote
To authorize the purchase of net energy billing credits be adopted to all presented to this meeting.
Is there a second? So it's been moved by Terry, seconded by Neil, that the vote entitled Vote to Authorize the Purchase of Net Energy Billing Credits be adopted in form presented to this meeting. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Nine. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Thank you.
Anything I can add before we leave this evening? Bill Stockmeyer had prepared this area for your awareness. If you would also sign the document for the business office.
Yeah, we can do that during our break before executive session. Title funds. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Moving on, title funds. For input on title use of funds.
Thank you, Danielle. And this is just a notice for public input. Assistant Superintendent Patricia Watts has convened our committee that represents the stakeholders and staff. And this is just a notice for public input, and I need to add through June 11th, 2021. So that's next Friday. And just for your awareness, our allocation this year is $1.2 million. There are several titles involved here. Title I, Title II, which is professional development. Title I, funds support direct services to students. So I'll just briefly summarize the amount. It's $982,977 for FY22, Title 1A. And I will make this public for you, with an increase of $38,000 from last year's allocation. Title 2A this year is $144,499, an increase of $12,463. Title 4A is $93,883, an increase of $6,764. And Title 5 is no subsidy this year, no allocation for that, and that's a loss of $21,924. So again, the total is $1,221,360. And what these federal funds subsidize for our school district are the reading recovery teachers and the program associated with that for early literacy interventions throughout our elementary schools. And it also subsidizes our contract and our service with KVCAP, which supports us with the pre-K programming, and it is almost entirely staffed by that agency. So the school district contracts with that agency. Their cost is up a little over $12,000 this year with a reduction in staff. KVCAP is also a Head Start agency. So there are slots prioritized for their own financing that must meet Head Start eligible thresholds. So the school unit contracts with that agency. So these services, and those are generally, with the funds are spent on, we are able to transfer some of these funds, like historically, we've transferred all of Title 4A into one to meet those programming needs. And it's our staffing that it mostly supports. And we also have some money dedicated to professional development, namely, like this summer, there'll be curriculum work in the area, content area of math, and there's some phonics programs. So that's what some of that money supports. So this is just a notice for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta. Do you have any questions? All right. Fall 2021 reopening and pool testing.
Pool testing, yes. And it was asked at our last school board meeting, what is our plan for reopening for fall 21? Nothing in our physical space has changed, and it is the physical distancing that has driven us to a hybrid model. The DOE recently released, along with the main CDC, some updated guidance. You all had received that, and I had referenced it at the last meeting, the pre-K to 12 and adult education public health guidance. Namely, on the second page of the document, all these materials are freely, readily available on the Maine Department of Education website. And there's a COVID-19 toolkit with a whole host of tables and drop-downs for all the resources that are there. But what is significant in this change and this update is that the physical distancing will move from a requirement to a recommendation, provided that each individual school participates in pooled testing, and that we meet a 30% threshold of participation. What families and our staff receive, and that's a combination of students and staff, all souls on board in a school building. And it would be with the consent of those individuals, whether it be adults or children. And at any time that consent may be withdrawn. So I have asked, and I thank her deeply for taking her time to be here. Deanna Turlo, who is our high school nurse. Our nurses have worked incredibly hard all year long. I think some of the contact tracing, it involves weekends. They've done that good and important work along with the school administrators. I think they've taken shift work, if you will, on who's working the weekend. And I also think Kara Armstrong, who has covered several of our schools in these times. But Deanna was part of our reintegration committee. We met yesterday and we had this discussion, and I had also invited the nurses to participate with our admin team and talk about, what this might mean. We went ahead and sent a very general survey without any too much information provided, just to kind of field test the idea of it. And we do have responses from families. Lori Faulkner and her team, John Holt included, have worked up a file that allowed us to see the totals and what percentage threshold we were at relative to the school's enrollment. And we took the October 1 count. But thank you, Deanna, who's going to talk about pooled testing and what that implies, and is it a way to work our way out of this hybrid model that we're in, and provide for our students and our staff a full return to in-person learning 5 days a week. So thank you.
Hello. So pool testing basically is a good way to describe it is like batch testing. So what they're going to do is whoever has consented to this, so it is definitely done by consent. This is not something that we're just going to go in and do on kids without parent permission, obviously. And it's basically a nasal swab that gets put into a test tube. I guess it's And it would, in the elementary grades, it would probably be done by classroom, I would guess. Just logistically, that would be the best way to do it. So everybody in the classroom who we have permission to swab will be swabbed. Kids above second grade most often are going to be able to do this on their own, so it's going to be pretty hands-off. The kids will swab themselves and then put the swab in the test tube. We close up the test tube, we ship it off to the vendor, whose name is Concentric. That's the name of the vendor, Ginkgo Concentric, we call it Concentric. That gets shipped off to Concentric. They run the test and we'll have the results within 48 hours. Once we get those results, if there is a positive pool, we will then test everybody in that pool with the rapid antigen Binax Now testing. And so they'll get swabbed, and then we will hopefully find a positive case, and if not, then we wait a day or two, and we swab again and hopefully find a positive case. The good thing about this is that if you are enrolled in this pooled testing, if your child is enrolled in this pooled testing, and you are in that positive pool, you do not have to quarantine. Unless you are symptomatic or unless you test positive with the Binax Now test. So it prevents people from having to quarantine the way that we have had to do this year, which is going to keep kids in school, which is, I think, what we all want, because other than a few rare isolated cases, we know that kids do better when they are in school and in front of their teachers to learn. And that is, I think, what they are looking at with this. The reason that they don't have to quarantine, which was kind of hard for me to wrap my head around, and based on what I've been doing all year long, knowing that I have a positive test and I have to take that kid out and quarantine everybody who's been in contact with them. The reason that they don't have to quarantine with this pooled testing is because we are serial testing them. They're going to be tested once a week, and the test that they're doing, the pooled testing, has a very low threshold for viral detection. So it's going to detect the virus before that person is even contagious. So the whole point is to catch that person who's positive before they develop enough viral load to spread it to other people in the group. So that is kind of how that works, and that kind of helped me wrap my head around it, and I hope it helps you as well. Like I said, the biggest benefit is that you do not have to quarantine if you are part of this pooled testing group, which will save us with the social distancing part. If we can get enough people involved in it, will also just be so beneficial for our students. The other thing that we had talked about in this document, the pre-K to 12 adult public health and health guidance, in that document it does state that only unvaccinated people are part of the pooled testing, and that is not the case. Vaccinated and unvaccinated people can participate in the pooled testing. And I verified that today with Nancy Dewey, who is the DOE pool testing project coordinator, and she's a school nurse, used to be a school nurse consultant for the state. So I spoke with her today. Another question that was asked at the reintegration meeting is the 30% threshold is a little bit tenuous right now. I think parents need to look for information, and I think we have some plans to get more information out to them. But if one of the questions was, if we're at 30% and then all of a sudden you have some people who decide they do not want to participate anymore, what's going to happen? The answer is we don't know. So I don't have an answer for that. I think the encouraging thing is just to try to put as much of a positive spin on it, even for parents, so that they understand that this is a good thing. The constant monitoring, knowing if you have a potential positive case in that pool and flushing that out so that we can keep more kids in school and seats where they belong. And so that, I think, is where we need to focus with that. The reason that they are encouraging vaccinated people to participate as well as unvaccinated people, obviously the vaccinated people already have the benefit of not having to quarantine the way the rules are written now if they are a close contact of someone who tests positive. But the vaccine also, we have to remember, does not prevent you from getting COVID. You can still get COVID if you're vaccinated. You can also still spread COVID if you're vaccinated. So that potential is still there, so those people still have that potential to develop COVID and spread it to others. So that's why we want to encourage those people to be in the pooled testing program. The other thing too is that, just reiterating that the COVID vaccine decreases the spread and the severity of COVID, but it doesn't stop you from potentially getting it and spreading it to others. So I think that's it for right now. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you. You answered my question already, so.
Okay, I'll just talk really loud, because that's not very loud. The question I have there is the same as what Danielle had. What happens if we're at 30% and then for some reason, whether parents withdraw consent to have their children participating in the pool testing, or all of a sudden for 1 week we don't have enough students because of sickness or whatever's happening. So I heard you say that you don't know the answer to that question, what would happen. Do you know when we're going to know what the answer to that would be? Because that's a concern that in the middle of the school year, is it better for us to just, obviously we want children in seats in schools, but transitioning in the middle of the school year to a completely different plan is also problematic. So do you know when we would know what would happen if we were to drop below the 30%?
Like I said, I asked Nancy Judy today, and she did not have an answer. She said that it is something that they are working on, trying to figure that out. I don't think that if we had sick children and they weren't in school and unable to be tested, that would be the concern. I think they're looking at the number of consents we have, not the number of people we actually are able to test. I think that's the number they're looking at. So if we have sick kids out, I don't think that that's anything that we need to be worried about, because we'll still have those consents. If we can't test them, we can't test them. We don't want them coming to school sick just so we can test them. We're trying to avoid that. So I don't know the answer just yet. As soon as I find out, I can pass that on to Roberta, and she can pass it on to you guys. I can also give you Nancy Judy's contact information. She said, please tell the school board to call me or email me at any time, and she would be happy to answer the questions, because she, like I said, she's the project coordinator for this at the DOE, so she knows a lot about it.
I have another question. I also heard you say that the test would be self-administered by 2nd grade and up. Is that accurate?
Yes, and there have been children as young as kindergarten who, with some training and with some guidance initially, have been able to perform the test themselves. A little bit of hand-over-hand training with the younger kids, but concentric, I don't know if you had a chance to look at any of the material that they had, but the points that they took home is, if you can pick your nose, you can do this test. Most kids can pick their nose, so most kids would be able to do the test. It's very non-invasive. The swab is about a half an inch. When you go about a half an inch up into the nose, and you swirl it 4 times, and then you go into the other nostril, and you swirl it 4 times, and that's it. It's not one of those ones that goes all the way up into the brain, which is why most kids are able to do it. On the Concentric website, there's a video, a short 2.5-minute video that shows a bunch of kids doing a test on themselves, and it's pretty, once you get the hang of it, I think it's a pretty quick procedure. And classrooms can get it done fairly quickly because everybody can do it at the same time, so it's just a matter of how long it takes you to put the swabs in the test tube. So.
Those are really great questions, and so Maine's vendor is Concentric, and there's also a whole host of messaging options to educate our families, and I've also asked if we're proceeding with this, which I believe we should. It's our best hope for right now to plan on fully reopening. I see from the numbers an indication that families are willing to participate, at least to that threshold. But a great question, and that's what we've been talking about, is people can move in and out of that consent. We also don't know what the environment's going to be. So right now, like we hosted a clinic for children 12 and older. We had 96 students access that just in the school, and we don't know how many through their own private healthcare providers. But soon, a vaccine will be available for younger children. So that's an element that's going to change, and things have changed quite dramatically. The other thing that the Department of Education is saying, is communicating to superintendents, is that we are waiting on the Fed CDC guidance for reopening schools. And when we talk about schools reopening, there are places in the country where it's been fully remote. So what we've done is better in accessing some in-person learning than some other places in the nation. But this is something that's new and different in that the Maine CDC is withdrawn because there was a higher bar with the Maine CDC than the Fed. So, and we've also been navigating between two departments or agencies, if you will, the Department of Education and the Maine CDC. And some of these documents are generated out, like when we say the SOP, and that's the investigative process, the protocol for positive cases of COVID-19. So, and that is been revised, I don't know, 6 or 8 times this school year. Since it was first released in mid-August. So it's hard to say, but I believe, and our reintegration team believes and supports moving ahead with just educating families, and the sooner we do this, the better, so we get a beat on if we can possibly bring everyone back, and the sooner everyone knows that, particularly our families, our staff, the better off we're all going to be. And I'm not advocating for anything but the reopening of our schools. And the other positive that comes from it is I work very closely with the school nurses and put out those notices, is there's a broad swath. A lot of people are swept up in the contact tracing. And adults who are vaccinated are exempt from that. But if anyone has children who have been caught up in that, some of them multiple times this school year, is very hard. You know, we have a graduation event coming up, and potentially we have people who can't participate in that. So this is serious business, and it's not an option for us to address this protocol in any interpretive way. So this is some measure of helping us not exclude, you know, so many children from school. So, and then another piece is, you know, as this state particularly, you know, opens up and these go away in public places and the distancing, relative to schools, there is a very low transmission in public schools in this state relative to the general population. So these are all good indicators and a strong argument, if you will, for a reopening. We'll see what the Department of Education has said. There haven't been any revisions to the framework, except for the fact that we will not be required to provide remote instruction, and that was part of that framework. It was part of the condition for reopening the schools that we absolutely need to provide for that. So, and that's another point that we discussed at our reintegration committee meeting and the status of that. And we'll have some more information at the next board meeting with some data. But I think our elementary schools have worked very hard to teachers, principals, counselors, and the like to bring children back out of remote. You know, just at the top of my list here, it's easy to distill this out because there are singleton grades in Albion Elementary. You know, there are 9 students out of the 84 enrolled who are wholly read. So I think that's great progress and a credit to the staff and, you know, families. This was a scary event, an ongoing event for people that affected everyone's lives and everyone's work, and people are ready to move forward. So I think this is an avenue for that.
I'll just give my personal opinion on this because being part of reintegration and listening to everyone yesterday, I'm definitely for this. If it's going to get the kids back into school for 5 days a week in person, honestly, after everything everyone has gone through this year, I think this would be an amazing opportunity. Does anyone else have anything else they want to add?
Are you able to share the survey results and what percentage of people have already said that they would potentially consent to this?
I can, I'll share that with you. And these are just very limited information was provided to families, but it's an indication of a willingness. And for families not to understand that participation in that survey was consenting to this. It is just a prelude. But Lori Faulkner had that data yesterday and was just talking to the team about where those thresholds are. And I would say that most of our elementary schools have met that threshold. It is the high school that I think is around 20% right now, with the junior high around 22, I think, roughly. But we're at the threshold for the other schools. And again, I mean, that's not fixed. It's once the messaging goes out and people have the detail and the actual consent in their hand, we might have more interested. Probably some people, and I've heard from people directly, and I answered as best I could, just wanted to know more about it. And of course they do. And the sooner that we deliver that information, the better off we'll be. So yeah, that information was shared out with the reintegration committee yesterday.
So then I have another follow-up.
Mhm.
First of all, I couldn't fill that thing out fast enough when it got sent out. Just put that out there. So what, and I realize this is probably thinking right ahead, but just to kind of put it out there and put it on my mind, what would happen if one school within the district did not meet that threshold?
Well, that's very clear in that document, and there's nothing, it is all purposefully laid out, and they didn't lay out that a school district need 30%. It's an individual school because that's where people, live and work during the school day, and it affects that little community and that population. So, being in that position potentially of not meeting that threshold, going ahead and seeing what we get for actuals, I think will, tell us where we're at.
Motion to proceed with the classroom pool testing for the 2021 school year, 2021-2022. Thank you. Been moved by Roy, seconded by Billy Joe. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's 10, 0, 0. Moving on, committee reports. I don't think there's any. Superintendent's report.
I'll just put this one. Thank you, Darren. And thank you again, Deanna. Great work. We're going to hear from our principals just an update on the end of year activities, but just a few brief comments about our building committee. They'll meet on Monday, and we have just completed the architects, myself, and the Department of Education's school construction team on sorting out the particulars of this next phase of the architects, CHA's agreement and contract with us, and some of the services that they're going to provide. For example, as we move into ed specifications, they are going to generate role model schools, so our staff have an idea of what's out there, and also programming that occurs in those places. And also working on our procurement of some property, and working with our civil engineer who is subcontracted through CHA. So I just wanted the board to be aware that the Department of Education, Scott Brown and his team, that every piece and step of our agreement with CHA and review what their output is going to be for us. So that is very clear, and we're going to move forward on Monday with those next phases. We had hoped to meet with staff before the school year adjourns. That may be the case. It could be that Kathy Cogan has already prepared this video, and they're also going to send out a survey to all of our staff, every employee, every person who works in our school buildings in the elementary schools, as soliciting their thoughts and contributions to what's next for our school district. So that's an update on our work with the architect. In regard to ESSER 3 funds, as of May 24th, the school district could begin to obligate funds, though the application is not out and I'm not filed any projects, but similar to what was allowable in the last round of that funding, and of course the set aside of $1.2 million in the way of direct service to children in supporting our staff to work on learning recovery and mitigate whatever this pandemic has caused. So, and that'll be through September 24 that we have to spend that money. But some of the more immediate projects, I had asked building principals to convene building-based committees and work on some ideas for outdoor learning spaces, and reimagining that or thinking about some possibilities. I think our students have very much enjoyed those opportunities, and our staff as well, but using some of that funding to make good use of the outside as a great resource. And I've already received some lists from elementary principals in particular for playground equipment. And these are all things that could be supported with this federal funding and improve what we have in the way of those activities, and how important outside play, recess, and all those things are for students. One of the things that has been difficult is some staff have mentioned, and that school is more than the curriculum. It's all the interaction that takes place with students, their peers, and with the adults who work with them, whether it's in the classroom or outside. And anyone who's observed kids at recess could tell some tales about that. But one of our great concerns, and it's been ongoing through this year, and we've talked about it at length at the reintegration committee meeting, is the number of students, particularly in the high school and in the junior high, has a relative amount of about a third of the population in remote learning, wholly read, who have not engaged with us despite the great efforts of staff. Thinking very carefully about next steps, and that school, I mean, and the silver lining and the good that's come of this is people have reimagined some experiences that they can provide for our students. So we're going to work on that. And also, one of the that came up in the discussion last week, we were talking about at-risk children and nutrition program. And one of our biggest barriers is transportation. So the very students who would theoretically or potentially be served by any after-school programming, for lack of transportation, would be actually the students who would leave the building likely at the end of the school day. just because that was their ride out. And our capacity, we purchased school buses with this federal money, but we still have a very limited number of drivers. You know, Scott Washburn, our Director of Operations, Facilities, and Transportation, is also driving school buses. So, as I'm thinking about that, drivers, we employ drivers who are support services workers, so they do the runs in the AM and the PM, and then they're in our school buildings during the day. And we have about 6 drivers who are wholly just driving buses and doing other things in those intervening hours. But to drive a bus, we need a CDL license. And we have tried and tried. Our former Delta Ed director, the late Pat Hughes, had worked with Scott in developing a CDL program through Delta Ed. But anyway, so one of the ways out of this, I think, is looking at purchasing the microbuses. And we have purchased a couple, and we're looking to purchase some more. It may be multiple runs, but the drivers, van drivers, would not need a CDL to operate that. And maybe in some of our rural communities, we could do a few runs and get people back and forth. But that transportation has been one of our biggest challenges this year. So we're looking to fund the microbuses. And also, just for your awareness, here's an example of capital improvement projects. Scott has received bids and has a lower bid to hot top, retar, resurface this whole complex right here. And it is money that we likely will not see, and I'm not seeing money of any substance in capital improvement in this school district for as long as I've been looking at the budget. And, you know, historically, we've cut positions through attrition. None of that has happened these last 2 years. Not one. You're going to talk a little further in the evening about the board negotiators work with our association. But so our budget and our validation referendum is coming up on Tuesday. It's a good budget, but again, it is reflective of all the one-time monies that have supported all the other pieces to our operations. So Scott has been thoughtful in what we need to do to improve what we have as it's grading. So those are just 3 examples of what we're doing with those monies. And I would like we'll begin with Ms. Lee to talk about just end of year events for her 2 schools. Thank you.
Program has invited their families to attend their last day as a family picnic in the park.
Gordon? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who've been on the board for a while, or had you seen it go through Diana Dunning's classroom, you know that she does a play every year, and we usually come over here to Williamson. Well, we didn't want to not have a play this year,
Okay, our graduation week is upon us next week. Monday night, we've got our senior scholarship awards night, and that will be in the Williamson Auditorium, 6 o'clock. We send invitations out to all the scholarship recipients, so they know that they're going to get something. They'll come. It's open to the other members of the senior class and the parents of the recipients that will get their scholarship on Monday night. And that should last probably an hour. There'll be a little reception afterwards. We've got marching practice will start Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday we'll have our senior class assembly, and that's an early release day only for the high school, just so we can clear the underclassmen out, create room in the auditorium. So we'll have the seniors down there at noon. You're welcome to come. That should last for an hour and a half, roughly, till the regular school day ends. Graduation scheduled for Thursday. We're keeping our fingers crossed that we'll have good weather. The extended day forecast looked like it was going to be good. The temperature was going to drop, so we won't be scorching 90 degrees. But we're planning on being outside on Kai's Field, and each graduate will get 10 tickets. There'll be a roped-in area for the ticket holders to be seated, and there'll be those without tickets can come. They can sit in the bleachers. We'll bring camp chairs to sit beyond the roped-in area. We're getting 900 chairs brought in from company on Wednesday, so we'll have plenty of seating for our graduates and their family members. That will be live streamed on FTV. If the weather's not cooperative, then we are going to postpone it until Friday because we don't have private graduation, no facilities are rented out. And we'll go Friday, rain or shine. Hopefully we'll be able to go outdoors as planned. If not, it will be inside and it will be in the Williamson Auditorium for the graduates. The parents, this will be the area for the parents to come. We'll have chairs out, benches out, a screen set up for live streaming, and then we'll coordinate the parents to be able to walk in through so they can witness their graduate going across the stage and receiving the diplomas. Not the most ideal, but at least that guarantees that everyone will be able to get in there and see their son or daughter graduate in person. Hopefully everything goes off without a hitch and we're graduating everybody on the 10th. And then Monday the 14th and Tuesday the 15th, we have our underclassmen assemblies for the Growth and Achievement Awards. That'll be first, and then we'll just run through a real shortened version of our school schedule so they can see their teachers for the last time and anything closed up as far as tournaments and whatnot. But that's it. We've got a busy week. We've got, like I said last time, I think golf carts to help assist people who aren't that mobile to get to see areas. We'll have underclassmen, NHS members who will be helping to pass out programs at graduation. They'll also be escorting people out to see the areas. Originally we had set up the pods, but since that went away with the state requirements, we're going to essentially do rows and have the seating in there. The only seats I'm going to set off and reserve would be for the valedictorian, and then a section for the teachers, and a section for any of you that would like to come. Invitations I did not get out for tonight, but you are all invited to graduation. I'll have a section on the side for you, so you'll be able to come in if you would like to. It should be good. We don't have this solid number yet, but we're hoping that we'll have 120 graduates or more, but 120 plus. So hopefully, fingers crossed, the weather's good and we're all able to have it take place. Any questions? There's a frequently asked questions page that's been posted for the seniors online that pretty much outlines all that stuff that I just said.
And I also wanted to Thank you for the event, Mr. Bowers, that you coordinated for your seniors last evening, the senior sunset, and bonfire, and the parking lot. The staff did a great job. They had pizza for the students, and music, and arcade games, and I think you had dunk tank sessions and activities.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thanks.
All right.
Yeah, there were probably 60 kids, I would say, that were there, so that was good.
Yeah,
Thanks, Mr. Washburn, for the manageable fire that we had.
It was very nice. I think people are working hard everywhere to have a positive close to what has been a very difficult school year, so thank you. Concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Other business, there's a couple of announcements I want to make before we go into executive session. June 17th is our next scheduled board meeting. It will be, we will be having the board awards and honoring retirees again in person at our next board meeting. Also, I just want to publicly acknowledge that this is Stu's last meeting on the school board, and I just wanted to thank you, Stu, for your service and your guidance and your knowledge. You're very welcome. Is there a motion to go into executive session? Oh, yes, and we're going to sign that document for the break. Is there a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA section 405-6A to discuss contract negotiations? So moved by Katrina, seconded by Neil, to go into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA section 405-6A. Any discussion? Seeing none,